Fantasy fanfiction. Guard the sky prison for 100 years, you will be invincible at birth. Chapter 1. Su Yuxing looked at himself in the mirror. At the age of 16 or 17, he is slender and handsome. Apart from his somewhat sickly pale complexion, he was a handsome young man in his prime. But he was wearing a soap scarf on his head, a short jacket with a black background and a red border, black trousers, and black cloth boots. He wears a long knife on his waist, and a big word, prison, is written on his chest. It looks like a jailer in a previous film and television drama. Traveled, and even crossed into a prison guard. Su Yuxing rubbed his temples, trying to digest the memories he had just received in his mind. He is now in a dynasty called Dayu, which has an extremely vast territory. As for the former guy named Su Yuxing, his family has been the prison guards of the Dayu dynasty for generations. His father, Su Zhang, was a moderate prison boss during his lifetime. Logically speaking, although a jailer is a lowly family and a cheap job, the relatives of prisoners in prison cannot avoid all kinds of management, which must be rich in oil and water, far more nourishing than ordinary jobs. But this is a world where martial Dao has supernatural powers and demons make trouble. During the 50 years of the reign of the last Emperor Yu alone, there have been no less than 10 major incidents of demons robbing prisons in Dayu. At that time, the blood moon swallowed the sky, the devil clouds covered the sun, and the bones were piled up into high mountains in Yujing City. Heads are rolling, blood is flowing like rivers, every house is plain. Su Yuxing just briefly recalled the few words in the files he had read before, and his face turned pale. And even if he was lucky enough not to die in such a catastrophe of prison robbery. Tianlao is an important place for the imperial court to detain death row criminals and serious criminals. Countless evil spirits and heretics, murderers and thugs occupy here. Over the years, all kinds of vicious and grievances have long been ingrained. In addition, the prison cell is cold and humid, and it is difficult to see the sun. Staying in such an environment all year round, the body will inevitably be corroded by various evil spirits, damaging the foundation and lifespan. There are not many normal prison guards who have lived past the age of 50. On Sus is a prime example. Their Su family has been passed down from generation to generation, and it has been like this from generation to generation. In the generation of Su Yuxing's father, Su Zhang, he was seriously ill and died just after he was 40 years old. This is also an important reason why Su Yuxing was only 16 years old this year, so he had to be kicked out of the shelves and put on a prison guard uniform to come to work. This body has the root of the disease in the mother's womb, and its constitution is weak. If he stays in the sky prison for a few more years, he may have to burp before he gets married and has children. The lineage of the old Su family is about to die. From this point of view, the prison guard is still a high-risk occupation. Thinking of the impending possibility in the future, Su Yuxing's heart suddenly turned cold. It's not that he didn't think about quitting. But right now, it's not the same as in the previous life, and the emperor is not the boss. The job arranged is not something you don't want to do if you don't want to do it. If you are kicked today, you will probably have to go to jail tomorrow, and you will die sooner. If you can't resign, the only feasible way seems to be. Su Yuxing's mind turned sharply, suddenly his eyes lit up, and he thought of a way out. Practice martial arts. Practice martial arts to strengthen your body. Martial Dao is a godlike world, so naturally only martial Dao can suppress all evil spirits and protect himself. It is said that when martial Dao has cultivated to a certain realm, he can easily avoid all evils and diseases. Even if the prison is in turmoil and has strength, he will have a greater chance of surviving. The more Su Yuxing thought about it, the more he felt that this idea was correct, but when he thought about it carefully, he realized that it was far from simple to implement. Not to mention that he is staying in the sky prison now. As a small prison guard, does he have the conditions to practice martial arts? Even if there is, with my lack of innate and my body riddled with tuberculosis, what can I do? And without the guidance of a famous teacher, if you practice blindly by yourself, maybe the more you practice, the faster you will die. Thinking of this, the light in Su Yuxing's eyes that had been lit for a while dimmed again. Sigh deeply. Why? Just when Su Yuxing was worrying about his future, there was a hasty knock on the door. Tuk tuk. Only then did he remember that he replaced his father as an errand for the first day today, and there were still people waiting at the door. He hurriedly got up, straightened his clothes and walked towards the door. When he opened the door, he saw a middle-aged man in his 40s with a sallow complexion and also wearing a jailer uniform standing. Uncle Lee. Seeing this person, Su Yuxing immediately called out. This person's name is Lee San, a friend and subordinate of Su Yuxing's father during his lifetime. Su Yuxing was on errand for the first day today, and Lee San was in charge of taking care of her. Is it changed? Let's go quickly after changing it. Lee San glanced at him casually, said nothing, greeted him and left. Su Yuxing hurriedly followed. The two walked along the dark and damp corridor for about half a cup of tea. Finally came to the dungeon area. Here, Su Yuxing saw cage-like rooms. It was similar to the prison cells seen in previous life movies and TV dramas. It's just that the fence is made of pure steel, and each one has the thickness of a bowl. There was no light in the cell. Su Yuxing squinted his eyes and looked around for a long time, but he didn't see a single prisoner. At this time, Lee San said, "You wait here, I will come as soon as I go." "Yes, Uncle Lee," Su Yuxing responded, obediently waiting in place. Not long after, Lee San came back. Also brought back a person. A prisoner with the word, "prisoner," written on his clothes. The prisoner was dragged by Lee San, and when he arrived at Su Yuxing, he casually threw it at his feet. Su Yuxing immediately smelled a strong smell of blood. He looked down carefully by the light of the torch on the wall next to him, and found that there was hardly a piece of good meat on the prisoner's body. All the limbs were broken, the tendons in the hands and feet were bare, there was not a single tooth left in the mouth, and even the position of the root of the descendants. There were traces of blood oozing out. So cruel. Su Yuxing's crotch tightened, resisting the discomfort, and raised his head to ask Lee San in front of him. "Uncle Lee, what did this man do? He was beaten so badly." "Awful." Lee San twitched the corners of his mouth, shook his head and said, "This person's surname is Sangming Chong, nicknamed Xuanwalang. He is a well-known flower picker in rivers and lakes, and he has harmed 800 if not 1,000 good families. Tu Mozi chased him for 3 years but failed to catch him. He never thought that this guy was so bold that he dared to hit Shangguo's daughter this time. The whole self cast a trap. It's not enough to die 1,000 times for this kind of prostitute, why do you still call him miserable?" Quote. Good guy, it turned out to be a flower picker. Su Yuxing was taken aback. He had only seen flower pickers in novels and TV before, but hadn't seen a live one yet. This time it is a long experience. While Su Yuxing was still looking at the prisoner curiously, Lee San threw a half-foot-long copper key at him, and ordered, "You lock this person up in No. 57 Sky Prison." Su Yuxing was taken aback for a moment, and pointed to own nose. "Myself. Otherwise, do you still have to lead the way for your kid?" Lee San gave him an annoyed look, and couldn't stop urging, "Go, go, you're a big man, it's slow. After the incident, the criminal room will find me." After finishing speaking, Lee San ignored Su Yuxing, turned around and left. Su Yuxing had no choice but to grit his teeth and accept the matter. Shushusha. In the dark and gloomy passage of the Sky Prison, Su Yuxing dragged the prisoner to slowly find the location of number 57 cell. Wherever it passed, the blood oozing from the wound on the prisoner's body left a long trace on the cell floor. The scene was really scary. It's not that Su Yuxing doesn't want to use a more humane way to carry the prisoner, but that the prisoner is too heavy. The set of shackles on his body alone weighed hundreds of catties, plus his own weight. With Su Yuxing's small body, he couldn't carry him at all, so he could only be dragged. If so, it didn't take long for Su Yuxing to break out in sweat. After finally finding cell number 57, Su Yuxing hurriedly threw the flower picker on the floor of the prison cell, which was covered with rotten cotton and rotten grass, and then slumped on the ground like an old dog panting. Whoa, whoa, I didn't expect this jailer to be physically active. If he didn't have any strength, he wouldn't even be able to move the prisoner. You really need to exercise your body. Quote. Su Yuxing couldn't help but lamented that his consumptive physical fitness was really poor, not to mention that he was worse than ordinary people, let alone those who had practiced martial arts. If there is such a high intensity, workload every day, the previous estimated years are optimistic. I am afraid that if I persist for less than a year, I will have to be carried out of the prison sideways. Then the old Su family was completely extinct. Sitting on the ground and thinking wildly for a while, Su Yuxing felt that he had regained a little strength, so he patted his buttocks and stood up to leave. But just when he locked the door of cell number 57, suddenly, there was a burst of dizziness in front of my eyes. In a trance, Su Yuxing seemed to see an ancient book bound by black chains and written in 3 large characters, the Sutra of Sin and Prison, quietly emerged in front of his eyes. The booklet opens by itself. Skip the first page quickly. On the second page, a portrait quickly appeared. The portrait depicts a handsome young man with peach blossom eyes. Prisoner, Sang Chong. Sin value, 2 stars. Strength, congealing pulse 8th stage. Status, in custody. Capture participation, 1%. Benefit, 10 experience points per hour. Below are pictures of sparkling water curtains. Just click on any one, and it will be a live erotic palace performed by a handsome young man and a certain woman. Su Yuxing's face was flushed red and his veins were racing. The whole person also completely woke up from the trance. A strong surprise and excitement filled my heart. This is my gold finger. Probably right. Sin and Prison Sutra. As long as Su Yuxing participates in the arrest, those who are guilty of crimes will be registered in the Sin and Prison Sutra. And these prisoners will also provide Su Yuxing with different degrees of benefits according to their own crimes, strength, and participation in Su Yuxing's arrest. I just put Sang Chong in a cell. With a 1% arrest participation rate, he can give me 10 experience points every hour. If I am completely arrested and brought to justice, with 100% participation in the arrest, how much experience can I provide? Quote. Su Yuxing doesn't know, but he knows that it must be much more than 10 o'clock every hour. Martial Tao, body tempering, pulse coagulation, qi gathering, transformation, innate. He didn't even get into the body tempering realm, let alone the 8th stage. If it weren't for the Sky Prison, the other party might easily crush him to death with a little finger. You can't be too greedy. It's good to be able to get income while lying down and hanging up the phone. How can you expect more? What I have to do now is to stick to the sky honestly and slowly improve martial Tao. When you become stronger in the future, then consider other things. Su Yuxing quickly clarified his own goal, calmed down a little, and left quickly. Brothers are good. 666. In the execution room of the Sky Prison, several men in jailer uniforms were yelling and punching and drinking. Li San was among them. Seeing Su Yuxing coming in, Li San casually asked him a few words. Knowing that the prisoner had been successfully imprisoned, Li San's face softened a little, and he picked up a bottle of wine on the table and threw it to him. Drink some wine to drive away the cold. The evil and cold atmosphere in the prison is strong. If you don't drink alcohol frequently to protect yourself, you may not be able to last for a few days. Quote. Thank you, Uncle Li. Su Yuxing did not refuse, took the bottle and thanked him softly. Li San didn't care about him anymore, and continued to punch others. Su Yuxing took the bottle and found a corner seat and sat down, unscrewed the bottle and took a sip. The strong and spicy wine pierced his throat and entered his stomach, bringing a burst of heat, and Su Yuxing felt that the coldness in his body disappeared a lot. Then he slowly clicked on the Sutra of Sin and Prison in his mind to check. But this time, what I read was not the page of the flower picker Sang Chong, but the first page of the Sutra of Sin and Prison. The page about him. Open black lens bracket prisoner, Su Yuxing, sick. Strength. None, 0/100. Cultivation technique. None. Available experience points, 3. His panel is very simple, basically nothing, and the status bar also shows, sick, which should correspond to his suffering from tuberculosis. At this time, it has been a while since he put Sang Chong in the cell, and the column of available experience points has also gained 3 points. Upgrading to the next first level requires 100 experience points, which means 10 hours. If I go up, will I be able to step directly into the body tempering first stage? Quote. Su Yuxing guessed. If you want to verify this, you only need to wait patiently for 10 hours. He is not in a hurry. For the rest of the time, Su Yuxing sat in the corner of the execution room, watching Li San and other old guards drinking and chatting. Apart from delivering a meal to the prisoners in the prison, nothing happened. These people are mainly responsible for managing the dozens of cells in the E-shaped prison, except that new prisoners are sent to the E-shaped prison, or the prisoners in the E-shaped cell need to be interrogated. Normally, it's pretty quiet. In Su Yuxing's heart, he really wanted to send another prisoner to escort him, so that the sin in prison scripture would generate another experience point. It's a pity that no new prisoners were sent until the shift was over. He had no choice but to follow Li San and the others to the yamen, and after tidying up a bit, he returned to his residence in the prison. In the room, Su Yuxing waited for several hours. It can be regarded as waiting until the experience point gain has accumulated to 100 points. Su Yuxing did not hesitate to add all the experience points to his strength. He watched the column that originally displayed Nun 0 100ths and heard a ding. Becomes body tempering first stage 0 200ths. Suddenly, an unexplained force suddenly poured into Su Yuxing's body, fused into his limbs. After a few breaths, all abnormalities in the body disappeared. Su Yuxing only felt itching in his throat, and with a cough, he opened his mouth and spit out a mouthful of phlegm. The phlegm was thick and black with blood, and fell on the ground, exuding an extremely stench. However, Su Yuxing felt as if he had lost 3 caddies. Whether he was walking or sitting down before, his chest always felt like a stone was pressing on him, and he was a little out of breath. Now that stone disappeared out of thin air, and his breathing became extremely smooth. My tuberculosis, healed. Su Yuxing glanced at the own panel, and found that the word, sick, after the name had disappeared. He stood up happily and started to move his hands and feet. Only those who have been sick can understand how good it is to have a healthy and strong body, and Su Yuxing is experiencing this now. The strength has also increased, at least doubled. Is this the feeling of stepping on martial Dao? Fantastic. It's also very cool. This is just the body tempering first stage, and just getting started with martial Dao. How powerful should it be when the strength improves in the future? Su Yuxing's face was full of joy, and his heart was full of anticipation. He changed from an ordinary person who was weak and sick and knew nothing about martial Dao to a warrior of body tempering first stage. It took only 10 hours before and after. If this speed spreads out, it may shock the jaws of a group of people. And all this is due to the Sin in Prison Sutra. As long as there is the Sin in Prison Sutra, I will guard the prison, and sooner or later I will be able to survive until the day when I become the ancestor. Of course, the premise is that there must be enough prisoners included in the Book of Crimes and Prisons. Su Yuxing's eyes flickered slightly. On this point, he felt that he should plan carefully. It's time for dinner. Su Yuxing picked up the long-handled wooden spoon in his hand and knocked on the prison bars. Immediately there were bursts of shishisuo sounds from the cells on both sides, and some figures crawled out of the darkness and crawled to the cell door. New boy, please give me an extra spoon. I'm starving to death. In the nearby prison cell, a skinny old man with gray hair was holding a broken bowl, leaned up to Su Yuxing, and said pleadingly, "1 scoop per person, no more and no less." Su Yuxing replied casually, then picked up a long spoon, scooped a spoonful of water or soup into the black and dirty wooden bucket that looked like a slop bucket, and put it into the broken bowl in the old man's hand. Now that they are all in jail, the food is naturally not good. The food in the Sky Prison is like this, as long as the prisoner is not starved to death. As soon as the old man got the food, he immediately showed it to his mouth, and he finished it in 3 or 2 bites. Then he wiped his mouth and looked at Su Yuxing eagerly, as if waiting for him to reward him with another bowl. Su Yuxing ignored him, just took out a booklet from his pocket, and turned to a certain page. Zhao Shilan, Weilang, a member of the Ministry of Industry. The crime committed is more than 100,000 taels of silver. It turned out to be a corrupt official. Yuan Weilang is only a mere 6th rank official, yet he can embezzle more than 100,000 taels of silver. I don't know if this old man has great skills, or if he has taken the blame for others. Su Yuxing glanced at the old man, shook his head, stuffed the booklet into his bosom, picked up the bucket and continued on. He got the booklet from Li San. It recorded the identity information of each of the 12 inmates in the entire EZZ prison, and the crimes they committed. Su Yuxing took advantage of this opportunity to give out food, and prepared to recognize each prisoner's face, which is also considered to be familiar with the business. Sun Bingfu, a talented scholar in Hanoi County, Jinshi. What was committed? Discuss government affairs indiscriminately. Quote. It turned out to be Zhanzheng. In this way, Su Yuxing distributed meals, and at the same time, he recognized the 10 or so inmates detained in the Wuzihao. After turning around, he found that most of these prisoners were imprisoned because they offended the imperial court or a certain powerful official in the imperial court. And most of them don't seem to have any martial Dao cultivation base. Except for the flower picker he imprisoned with his own hands yesterday, the only one who can be considered a strong martial Dao should be General Chu Long. Seeing this name, Su Yuxing couldn't help raising his eyebrows slightly. The end is a bit domineering. Look at the other party's profile. General Chu Long, a person from Zhongyan, the crime he committed, rebellion. Good guy. Su Yuxing looked into the cell subconsciously, but only saw a dark figure from the back. The prisoner named Chu Longjong was sleeping with his back to him, and he didn't answer to ask him to eat, but he had a bit of a temper. Su Yuxing shook his head and ignored him. Finally, he walked to cell number 57 and looked at the flower picker from yesterday. The guy is awake now, lying on the ground with his mouth open and shut, as if begging for water. Su Yuxing didn't dare to go in casually, but he was afraid that he would die. If he died, his only source of experience would be cut off. So I picked up the rice spoon and poured 2 spoonfuls of soup on the face of the flower picker, and added a full spoonful to his bowl, which was specially scooped up from the bottom of the bucket. It was a relatively thick soup and rice. Only then did I leave with some peace of mind. The Book of Sin in prison did not register those prisoners who were originally locked in the cell. Is it because I did not participate in the arrest at all? Doesn't that mean I have to wait for the new prisoner to come in, so that I can have new experience, baby? Quote. On the way back after delivering the meal, Su Yuxing kept thinking about it. He felt that the setting of the Book of Sin in prison was a bit up. If the prisoners in the Sky Prison can't be used, wouldn't it be a waste of the great resources in front of us? Just as he was thinking, he had unknowingly returned to the resting area of the jailers. Su Yuxing just entered the door, and Li San inside saw him, and immediately greeted him. Xiao Su, you came just in time. Prisoner number 12 needs to be interrogated, so hurry up and bring him out. Quote. Su Yuxing was taken aback for a moment, and then saw a middle-aged man in official robes with cold eyes in the execution room. Yes, yes. Su Yuxing hurriedly turned around and walked out together with another guard. It turned out that the prison code came. How did Su Yuxing arrive when he first came here? Except for Li San, the other guards in Tianlao were not familiar with him. On the way, he did not speak to the jailer who went with him. When he arrived at cell No. 12, Su Yuxing discovered that the prisoner who was going to be interrogated by the prison guard was precisely the prisoner Chu Longjong who had committed the crime of treason. Chu Longjong kept his back to him when serving the meal, so he couldn't see his face clearly. Now he finally saw the whole picture. It was completely different from what Su Yuxing expected. With Chu Long's domineering name, this deity is actually an old man with dark skin and ravines on his face. With rough hands and feet, he looked like an old farmer who had just stepped up from the crop field. Although its appearance is not good, there is no shortage of treatment for treason. In addition to the heavy shackles on his body, Pippa's bones were also pierced by several thick and long chain holes. The wounds were festered and maggots grew, and he couldn't bear to look at them. When he was taken out of the prison, Chu Longjong was honest, with his eyes closed, and he didn't say a word. But when Su Yuxing and the others sent him to the execution room, Chu Longjong's eyes opened suddenly, and there seemed to be a flash of light in them, and he opened his mouth and yelled at the prison guard, "Officer Dog." The sound was thick and strong, shaking the beams of the house. The jailer also sneered at the moment, and directly ordered, as expected of a master of martial Dao, "After these days, I am still full of spirit. Come on, give this guy a good relaxation." 2 ferocious jailers immediately brought up various instruments of torture and surrounded Chu Longjong. Su Yuxing didn't see the scene behind, and all the guards, who were not very senior, were kicked out. Su Yuxing stood at the door of the execution room, only listening to the constant scolding and shouting from General Chu Long inside, but he didn't even let out a scream. But just the unique sounds made by those instruments of torture falling on the flesh made Su Yuxing shudder. Why do I always feel like the villain's helper in the movie now? Usually this kind of person doesn't end well. Su Yuxing listened to the movement in the execution room, thinking silently. Standing opposite him, the jailer who brought Chu Longjong up with him was also uncomfortable, with a look of unbearable expression on his face from time to time. But he is also a person who has not been poisoned to the point of numbness by the dungeon environment. Su Yuxing's heart moved slightly, and he couldn't help but chat with the other party. Only then did I learn that the other party's name was Zheng Yi, and like him, he was also a jailer replacing his late father. It's just that he came earlier than Su Yuxing, and has been in the Sky Prison for 3 or 4 months. The interrogation of General Chu Long by the prison department lasted for more than an hour. Su Yuxing's legs were almost numb when he was standing at the door, and only then did he see the gloomy prison code come out of the execution room. Hurry to send the prison code away, and then a group of old guards who followed the prison code to participate in the trial came out. It's hard to hide the tired look on each face. You still send it back. Li Sanchong and Su Yuxing waved their hands. The two agreed and walked quickly into the execution room. As soon as I entered the door, I immediately smelled a strong smell of blood in the air, mixed with pepper water, and the smell of burnt pork. Chu Long, who was lying on the ground, curled up his thin body and was already out of shape. Enduring the discomfort, Su Yuxing and Zheng Yi lifted Chu Longjong up and hurriedly sent him back to No. 12 prison. As soon as the prison door was locked, the Sin and Prison Sutra in Su Yuxing's mind immediately began to move. Prisoner, General Chu Long. Sin points, 3 stars. Strength, Gathering Chi 5th stage. Status, in custody. Capture participation, 1%. Benefit, 20 experience points per hour. There are still some pictures about Chu Longjong's crimes below, but Su Yuxing didn't click to read them. This General Chu Long has higher strength and crime points than the previous Sang Chong, and he can provide him with 20 experience points every hour. But what really surprised Su Yuxing was, this can be regarded as participating in the arrest. It is common for prisoners to be interrogated in the Sky Prison. Sometimes even if the higher-ups do not order the interrogation, the jailers in the prison are bored, and they will bring up a certain prisoner to torture them for fun. In this way, the chances of including prisoners in the Book of Crimes and Prisons will be greatly increased. Sang Chong and Chu Longjong can provide Su Yuxing with 30 experience points every hour. The experience points needed to upgrade from Body Tempering 1st stage to Body Tempering 2nd stage are 200, that is to say, Su Yuxing only needs to wait for 7 hours. You can advance to Body Tempering 2nd stage again. Su Yuxing was delighted in his heart, but he didn't show the slightest bit on his face. After locking the number 12 cell, he turned and left with the jailer Zheng Yi he had just met. Several hours later, Su Yuxing released the government. Back at the residence alone, Su Yuxing washed up and took a nap. When he wakes up, check the Sin and Prison Sutra. The income experience value accumulated above has already broken through 200. Promote. Continue to add strength. Just like the first time, a force emerged out of nowhere and merged into Su Yuxing's body like a trickle. After this power disappeared, Su Yuxing had successfully entered the Body Tempering 2nd stage realm. Hoo! Su Yuxing punched and kicked indiscriminately, and jumped up on the spot again, tossing and tossing for a while before stopping in satisfaction. The strength and speed have more than doubled than before, and the physical strength has also become much stronger. Now I feel like I can kill an old scalper with one punch. The only pity is that Su Yuxing doesn't know martial arts at all, and can only be regarded as a Body Tempering 2nd stage reckless with brute force. It's okay to let him bully ordinary people, but if he encounters that kind of martial arts practitioner, even if he is in the same realm, he probably has to stop. There are a lot of martial Dao masters in the prison. Let's see if we can find an opportunity to learn a thing or two from this kind of people in the future. But this kind of thing can't be rushed, you have to figure it out slowly. In Su Yuxing's previous life, he had read too many novels where the protagonist was deeply imprisoned, but accidentally obtained the supreme cultivation technique inheritance in the prison, reborn from death, and a blessing in disguise. I made up my mind to check the inside and outside of several cells under my command when I have time, to see if there are any martial doubt treasures left by former prisoners on the walls, on the ground, and in the cracks in the bricks. Of course, the martial arts obtained in this case must be risky. If you can acquire martial arts through formal channels, it is better to go through formal channels. It takes 300 experience points to upgrade body tempering 2nd stage to body tempering 3rd stage. At my speed, it only takes less than a day to accumulate enough experience points. Su Yuxing did the math. If the experience value increase of every 1st stage in the body tempering realm is 100 and 100 plus. In less than half a month, he will be able to reach the body tempering 9th stage, and start preparing to hit the pulse condensation realm. So fast. And it was so fast, Su Yuxing warned himself to be more cautious. Unless it is absolutely necessary, you must not reveal your strength. Otherwise, Deus Demon Slayer and Demon Killer would be the next to arrest him. I have to arrest myself and torture me to see if I have practiced some amazing magic skills or evil methods. After Su Yuxing was familiar with the newly improved strength, he had nothing to do, so he dug up Chu Longzhong's crimes and looked at them casually. I found out after reading it. Although this Chu Longzhong was tough, he looked like a hero with strong bones. However, during the uprising and rebellion, there were not a few innocent people who were killed indiscriminately. There was even an act of deliberately letting the old and weak, women and children block the swords and guns of Daewoo officers and soldiers, which was quite cruel. It's not without a reason to be able to read the Book of Sin in prison. Su Yuxing shook his head, turned off Chu Longzhong's crime record, and went to watch the flower picker Sang Chong's crime record instead. It's still the one worth watching, enough to comfort his lonely and restless heart in the Long Chong Yi. A week later, Su Yuxing carried the swill bucket to deliver meals to the prisoners as usual. During this week, you can't say that he didn't gain anything at all, but this gain is also extremely small. In 7 days, a total of 1 prisoner was interrogated in the Tian prison of the Wuzihao, that is, Sun Bingfu, the talented son of Hanoi who was imprisoned in the Tian prison because of Jian Zheng. Su Yuxing, who wrote the scriptures, made the Sin in Prison classic, included. But this guy, Martial Dao, is only as strong as body tempering 6th stage, not as good as Su Yuxing. Su Yuxing is already in the body tempering 7th stage right now. The sin value is also low, only half a star. Each hour can only provide Su Yuxing with 2 experience points, which is better than nothing. General Chu Long, eat. Su Yuxing walked to cell number 12 and knocked on the cell door. The figure inside sat with his back facing the wall and ignored him. Su Yuxing didn't bother to care about him, scooped a bowl of soup into the broken bowl, and left directly. Soon we arrived in front of cell No. 57. Sang Chong eat. Su Yuxing yelled twice, but the flower picker lay on the ground without moving. Su Yuxing looked into his bowl and saw that the broken bowl was clean, and he was taking a spoonful of the thick one and was about to put it in his bowl. The prisoner in the cell next to him suddenly leaned out and shouted, "This guy didn't eat the last meal, it's all for the sake of the rats in the cell. I think 80% of them are dead. Brother jailer, why don't you give me his share, I'm starving to death." Didn't eat last meal. Su Yuxing was startled, and hurriedly checked the Sin in Prison Sutra in his mind. However, he saw the page of Sang Chong's information in Sin in Prison Sutra, and the writing on it was slowly fading away. He hurriedly dropped his rice spoon and wanted to go in to check, only to realize that he didn't have the key, so he hurried back to find someone. When Su Yuxing called Li San over, the two opened cell number 57 and touched Sang Chong, only to find that this guy's body was hardened. Just in the morning, Su Yuxing also read that the experience points provided by Sang Chong are still increasing. This shows that the opponent's death time is estimated to be within these few hours. Su Yuxing looked at Sang Chong's body, feeling a little sad in his heart. The main reason is that once Sang Chong died, he immediately lost a source of experience points. And there is no live erotic palace to watch at night. Why? Li San was very calm about Sang Chong's death. In the Sky Prison, it is very common for prisoners to die. In fact, the vast majority of death row prisoners do not live to be executed. This Sang Chong got into trouble with the Shangguo mansion, and when he was delivered, he had only half his life left, and it was a miracle in itself that he could survive until now. Li San asked Su Yuxing to dispose of Sang Chong's body, and then simply cleaned the number 17 prison before leaving directly. After Su Yuxing finished handling this matter, it was already half an hour later. He found a place where no one was around, and opened the Book of Sin and Prison to read. Sure enough, the page belonging to Sang Chong had disappeared, but to Su Yuxing's surprise, Sang Chong left something after his death. The skills learned by the criminal can be extracted once. Do you want to extract them now? Su Yuxing was startled for a moment, and then overjoyed. Unexpectedly, after the death of the prisoner in the Sin and Prison book, he could still draw a lottery for him. Thinking that Sang Chong was also a master of martial Dao at 8th stage when he was alive, Su Yuxing hastily drew a lottery. After he ordered the lottery draw, he saw many balls of light escaping from that page of the Sutra of Sin and Prison. One of the largest light clusters was absorbed by the power of the Sin and Prison Sutra. Congratulations to Prison Master for obtaining martial arts, floating light. In an instant, countless information images merged into Su Yuxing's mind. In these memory images, Su Yuxing seems to be the incarnation of Sang Chong, with sandbags tied to his feet, practicing the art of lifting. After a while, all images disappear. And in the cultivation technique column of Su Yuxing's personal panel, there is also a martial arts. Floating light, 5th rank Qinggung, realm, superb, 3466 10,000ths. It is the door Qinggung. And it is a 5th rank Qinggung. Although Su Yuxing doesn't know much about martial Dao, he also knows the division of martial arts grades where the 1st rank is respected. 5th rank, and it's still Qinggung, not too low. Not only that, but Su Yuxing also inherited all of Sang Chong's attainments in this martial arts, reaching the superior realm. The 5 realms of martial arts: enter the room, practice makes perfect, reach the pinnacle, be superb, return to the basics. This Sang Chong is indeed a well-known flower picker on rivers and lakes, and he has already trained Qinggung to a state of perfection, and he is only 2/3 of his practice progress away from the highest state of returning to the original. It's no wonder that Sang Chong, who has only the strength of 8th stage, has been hunted down by Tu Mozi for many years and has never been caught. He even has the courage to enter Shangguo's mansion to steal incense and jade. Not without reason. Artists are bold. Only now, it's all cheap Su Yuxing. The 5th rank was in a state of perfection. With Qinggung in his body, Su Yuxing immediately felt that his own body was much lighter, as if the wind was blowing under his feet, and his body was as light as a swallow. He looked around to see if there was no one around, and looked at the beam above his head and jumped lightly. The whole person immediately soared up like a big bird, and landed silently on the beam. Jumped down again. It also landed silently, with no footprints on the ground, not even a whiff of the wind, and the flame of the torch on the wall remained motionless, just like a feather. A speck of floating dust fell on the ground. What an awesome Qinggung! Su Yuxing was overjoyed. This movement technique is indeed worthy of the 4 words of perfection. He is still only a body-tempering 7th stage, unable to bring out all the subtleties of this Qinggung. When his strength increases, it is estimated that the effect will be even greater. The point is, this Qinggung can continue to rise. There are only more than 6,000 experience points in the next realm, and I really don't know what the situation of floating light and glittering art will be like. Su Yuxing learned new martial arts, jumping up and down, having a great time. Now there is no regret or depression at all. I just feel that Sang Chong died well and wonderfully. He should have died long ago. Hey, I eat this rotten water and rotten soup every meal, and I still can't get enough to eat. When will I be ahead these days? The skinny old man was holding the bowl, looking at a few rotten vegetable leaves floating in the clear soup. He couldn't help sighing. Su Yuxing, who had just put down the spoon, couldn't help laughing when he heard this, and said, "Master Zhao, what you said is that rotten water and rotten soup are good. If I bring you roast chicken and fine wine tomorrow morning, do you think you can eat it?" Quote. The old man shrank his neck subconsciously after hearing this, and said with a sneer, What Brother Su said is true, what Brother Su said is true. Roasted chicken and fine wine are the specifications of decapitated rice in Tianlong. If you really eat it, it means that you are not far from death. Su Yuxing, the old man named Zhao Shilan, came to his senses immediately, and drank a bowl of soup and rice in a few gulps, and didn't dare to say another word. At this time, almost 20 days had passed since Su Yuxing entered the prison as an errand. Su Yuxing walked in the dark passageway of the prison with a rice bucket in his hand. With a well-proportioned figure and steady steps, he was almost a different person from the sickly look when he first came in. No one knows that the current Su Yuxing is already a warrior of the body-tempering 9th stage. With the great power of pulling 9 cows backwards and changing pillars, there is also a brilliant movement technique that is fleeting. It's also fortunate that the jailers in the prison know how to drink and gamble every day, and they don't have the heart to pay attention to others. Otherwise, the changes that happen to me would be easily noticed by those who care. In fact, Su Yuxing is low-key enough, and basically doesn't have much contact with others. But in half a month, he grew from a weak crowned boy with no strength to a body-tempering 9th stage. The soaring qi and blood in the body can't be hidden at all. Su Yuxing has already made up his mind. If someone really asks, he will say, the food in the prison has been good recently, and my body has grown. In addition, I have asked an old Chinese doctor to prepare medicine, and the sick body has been recuperated. Anyway, the cultivation base of the body-tempering realm, you can't feel it if you don't get a fight with it. On the contrary, he will be promoted to congealing pulse soon, and I don't know if there will be new visions after consolidating pulse. After tonight, I will be able to accumulate enough experience points to advance to the pulse condensation realm. Su Yuxing thought to himself. Once Sang Chong died, he lost an important source of experience. Although in the past half a month, many prisoners have been interrogated one after another. But most of these people are literati, not familiar with martial Tao, and the experience benefits they can provide are pitiful. Thanks to Chu Longzhong, who was in Qi gathering realm, he didn't lose much progress. Now, Su Yuxing's available experience points have accumulated to more than 900. As long as tonight's midnight is over, it will be full of 1000, and you can hit the pulse condensing state. After distributing meals to a dozen prisoners, Su Yuxing walked back with an empty slop bucket. But before he could go back to the back kitchen of the prison, he saw 2 Taoist figures walking towards him in a hurry. One is Li San. The other person, Su Yuxing didn't know very well, only knew that the other person was Zhang Hu, and like Li San, he was also an old prison guard who had worked in the prison for decades. Seeing Su Yuxing, Li San greeted immediately. You are right here, come quickly, come with us. Su Yuxing didn't know why, so he put down the slop bucket and was hurriedly dragged away by Li San. When I arrived at the torture room, I found that all the 7 or 8 guards on duty in the Wuzi Tianzhou had arrived. One by one, they changed their usual lazy style, and stood on both sides of the execution room, with a straight figure and a dignified expression. Could it be that the prison officer is coming again? Su Yuxing remembered that the last time the prison guard came, everyone didn't have such a battle. Who is here this time? Prison history. Or the highest jailer? Just as he was thinking, he suddenly heard footsteps coming from the door. Not long after, several Taoist shadows filed in. As these people came in, the flames in the execution room dimmed suddenly. A powerful icy aura instantly enveloped the entire execution room, and every jailer felt breathless. Su Yuxing secretly looked up. I saw a tall woman with a frosty face standing in the middle of the execution room. The woman was dressed in brocade, with a long knife in her hand, her hair was tied up with silver rings, and a monster with teeth and claws was embroidered on her clothes. She coldly glanced at every jailer in the room, her eyes were like blades, and she could feel the tingling sensation on the skin of anyone who fell on them. The prison code that Su Yuxing had seen last time was standing beside the woman like a pug at this time, with an extremely humble posture. Tu Mozi. He is from Tu Mozi. Su Yuxing recognized the style of the robe on the woman's body. And only the people of Tu Mozi, who have dealt with demons and heretics all the year round, can carry such a heavy murderous intent and killing intent. Is this the entire staff of your number 5 cell? Su Yuxing heard the woman with a strong aura snort coldly, and said, not one of them is useful. The faces of all the jailers were flushed, but they didn't even dare to fart. Prison Dian smiled and said, "Lord Shangguan, don't worry, I will recruit people from other companies later, and I will never fail the job. You better understand the importance of this matter. If this prisoner escapes, none of you will be able to escape from the first floor of the prison." HMPH. Understood, I understand. The woman Tu Mozi, surnamed Shangguan, said a few words, and left vigorously. However, Su Yuxing captured a key word from his conversation with the jailer: the first floor of the prison. They are on the first floor of the Sky Prison. Could it be that there are many more floors in the Sky Prison? No one had ever heard of it before. The prison code sent off the superior officer of the Tumo division, walked in wiping cold sweat, and quickly greeted everyone. "Quick, come with me to pick up the prisoners, all go." Su Yuxing and others hurriedly followed the jailer to the door. Not long after, I saw 2 servants from the Demon Tumor division escorting one of them over. Su Yuxing thought it was some kind of 3-headed, 6-armed, blue-faced, long-toothed felon who could attract the chief officer of the Demon Tuning division to come and explain himself. When I saw it, I realized that it was just a little old man with white hair and a childlike face and a pleasant smile. The old man had a kind face, and he always had a smile on his face. When he saw the jailers of the Wuzi, he even politely said, "From now on, I will trouble you all." The jailers naturally didn't dare speak to him. All the jailers were dispatched, and there were even some jailers drawn from other names. 20 or so people surrounded the old man and escorted him to the cell in a mighty manner. On the way, all the prisoners in other cells poked out their faces curiously to watch the commotion, not knowing which god came in. The new prisoner was selected to be held in cell No. 1. When the prisoner was taken into the cell, the prison guard locked it himself, and Su Yuxing, who was among the escorting crowd, only felt a slight movement of the Sin in Prison Sutra in his mind. Then a new page was turned on the Sutra of Sin in Prison. Prisoner, Yan Huan. Sin value, 7 stars. Strength, Transcendence 9th stage, close black lens bracket. 7-star sins. Shedding 9th stage. Hiss. Su Yuxing took a deep breath in his heart, and then looked at the little old man who had just been imprisoned. His eyes suddenly changed. God knows what kind of vicious and brutal monster is hidden under the other party's harmless appearance. How many people have to be killed and how many outrageous things have been done to achieve the 7-star crime value. Shedding 9th stage. One step further, is the famous innate great master all over the world. Tu Mozi actually sent such a peerless murderer to the Sky Prison, and let them guard him. For a moment, Su Yuxing only felt the cool air whistling on the back of his neck, and his heart was terribly cold. But Yan Huan's crimes are heinous, his strength is extraordinary, and the benefits he brings to Su Yuxing are also unprecedentedly rich. Even though the capture participation rate is still 1% as before, the experience value gain provided every hour has reached a full 60 points. Equivalent to 3 Chu Longjongs and 6 Sang Chongs. For a moment, Su Yuxing didn't know whether he should be happy or worried. Leaving cell number 1 and returning to the rest area. The jailers of Bizahao left directly after helping them in custody. The jailers of Wuzhihao got together and whispered around the new prisoner just sent, and no one drank or gambled. Su Yuxing spotted a gap, leaned up to Li San, and asked in a low voice, "Uncle Li, what is the origin of the number 1 prisoner who was just sent here? So many of us escorted him, and even the prison guard personally watched." Li San glanced at him, snorted, and said, "It would not be an exaggeration to have 10 times more people. Do you know who this person is?" "Who?" Li San glanced to the left and right, as if he was afraid that people would overhear. He lowered his voice and quickly replied, "A deputy head of the Liansheng demon sect. Just stay in RE Brand for a few days, and soon we will be transferred to the prison below." Liansheng demon cult. Su Yuxing was shocked when he heard these 4 words. Although he came here through time travel and lived in the Sky Prison for a long time, he still knows the name of the Liansheng demon cult like a thunderbolt. The Liansheng cult is one of the largest demon sects in the Deu Kingdom, and the demons under its teaching have done many shocking and evil things. Many horrific and major murders that have been circulated in the market were committed by the disciples of the Liansheng sect. Yan Huan is the deputy head of the Liansheng demon cult. No wonder the sin value can be as high as 7 stars. Su Yuxing's expression changed suddenly, and he asked curiously, "Uncle Li, is there really another layer in our sky prison?" "That's natural, otherwise, where are you going to be imprisoned when there are so many demons and monsters? Ours is at best the outermost layer of the prison. Those imprisoned are also criminals and thieves." Li San pointed at his feet, with a dull expression. "The real bottom layer of the dungeon is far more dangerous than ours. A jailer is not something ordinary people like us can do. Oh, by the way, be careful when delivering food to cell number 1 during this time. Don't look into that person's eyes, let alone talk to him." Li San said with a solemn expression. "I heard from the prisoner that on the way to arrest and bring him to justice, this man killed dozens of guards just by talking, and even the people in the Tumo division went crazy for 2 hours. Individual. Dozens of servants were killed with just one mouth, and 2 people from the Demon Slayer were crazy." Su Yuxing felt both horrified and unbelievable, and immediately included Yan Huan in cell number 1 on the list of the most dangerous people in his mind. Li San said a lot to Su Yuxing, but he felt that he had slipped his words, so he quickly shut up. After listening to Li San's narration, Su Yuxing knew that there must be a lot of exaggeration in the other party's words, but he also had a deeper understanding of Yan Huan, who pitied the demon sect. "Looking at the direction of the number 1 cell at this time, I can only feel the shadows over there, and the ghosts are haunting, which makes people shudder." After releasing the yamen, personal residence, Su Yuxing sat cross-legged on the bed, reading the Sutra of Sin in prison. With Yan Wanji's help, he had already accumulated 1,000 experience points before midnight. Next, it was time for him to hit the pulse condensation realm. Su Yuxing added all 1,000 experience points to his strength. Soon, the original, body-tempering 9th stage 0/1000th suddenly became congealing pulse 1st stage 0/2000th. At the same time, Su Yuxing only felt that his whole body was boiling, and there seemed to be countless tiny ants gnawing and crawling in his body, which was extremely itchy. Fortunately, the itching only lasted for a short time and then ended. The hot blood also quickly subsided. A stream of air like a clear spring appeared in Su Yuxing's body, slowly swimming along his body meridians. "It's done." Su Yuxing got up happily, only then realized that his whole body smelled bad. During this breakthrough, a layer of black and yellow dirty grease appeared. It is estimated that it is the effect of washing the tendons and cutting the marrow after the body tempering is completed. At this moment, he didn't care about these things, and couldn't wait to test his strength after breakthrough. The strength and speed have increased several times, and after the pulse is condensed, the true qi is generated in the body. When making moves, this true qi can be called at any time. Su Yuxing transported the true qi in his body into his hand, and slapped out with a palm out of thin air. A fleshy palm made a sharp sound like a sword piercing the air. He slapped his palm on the ground, and there was a thunderous click, and the half-foot-thick blue bricks paving the ground under his feet suddenly shattered into many pieces. After using true qi, the power of the moves will be several times greater. Ordinary people are afraid that their skin will be shattered instantly if they receive this palm. Is this the strength of the pulse condensation realm? Quote. Su Yuxing couldn't help sighing. He found that the martial Tao in this world was far more powerful than he imagined. No wonder it is rumored that Deu Demon Slayer specializes in killing evil spirits. If martial Tao didn't have this power, how would ordinary people be able to deal with those goblins and ghosts who have practiced for hundreds of years and thousands of years? Su Yuxing tried, floating light and gliding shadow skill, instead. After congealing the pulse, this superb Qinggung seems to really display its original style. Not only is the movement technique more erratic and light, but after casting it, the figure becomes much more concealed, like a ghost. After the experiment was over, Su Yuxing quickly called hot water to wash off the filth all over his body, and then lay down comfortably on the bed. Having nothing to do before going to bed, Su Yuxing curiously turned to the page of Yan Huan in the Book of Crimes and Prisons, and looked at the crimes committed by Yan Huan. The result is a sleepless night. The next day. Number 1 prison cell. The Qingwang old man who sat quietly on the ground and dozed off heard the movement from outside the door, and slowly opened his eyes. He saw that the tall and handsome young jailer was serving him food. The old man stared at the jailer with interest for a while, and suddenly his eyes flashed, and he sighed softly. I didn't expect that there are such fine materials and beautiful jade in this place where the filth is hidden. It's incredible. After the old man sighed, he thought he would get some response. But he didn't want. The jailer who scooped up his rice didn't even look up, as if he didn't hear him at all. The old man thought for a while, and said again, "Little friend, do you know that you are staying on the first floor of the Sky Prison, serving as a little prison guard who serves tea and meals every day, and it is a complete waste of a good talent. You are a flood dragon, but you are lurking in the abyss." The young jailer still didn't look up, he was busy with the matter in hand. The old man frowned slightly, and couldn't help but said, "Little friend, the old man is talking to you, maybe you heard it." The young jailer didn't respond, he picked up the slop bucket and walked away. "Hey, hey," the old man Qingwang called twice, until the back of the other party completely disappeared in the dark passage. Only then did he put his hand down, and eyes reveal said to himself suspiciously, "Could it be that the people from Tumosi have learned how to behave and find a deaf person to deliver meals to me?" Shaking his head, his eyes closed again. "Call." Su Yuxing let out a long breath until he was completely out of the range of number 1 cell. It's no wonder that you can talk about dead people with a single mouth. When Yan Huan speaks, there seems to be a trace of demagogic effect in his voice. Su Yuxing recalled the experience just now, feeling a lingering fear in his heart. Fortunately, he had a rough overview of Yan Huan's crimes last night. Knowing the murderous nature of the other party, he was on guard before he came to deliver the meal, otherwise he might have really followed his way just now. Thinking back on Yan Huan's crime recorded in the Sin in Prison classic, Su Yuxing shudders a little. He saw Yan Huan once refined a magic treasures for the sacrifice, and collected the souls of thousands of innocent people. He sees Yan Huan once took the heart and soul of hundreds of newborn babies to practice a magic skill. He sees, in order to fight against the powerful enemy, Yan Huan used some kind of devil Dao secret method to dig up the purple river carts in the wombs of hundreds of pregnant women. Those inhumane methods are beyond Su Yuxing's imagination. Compared with these brutal behaviors, Yan Huan's appearance is too deceptive. Who would have thought that there was such a devil hidden under that benevolent skin? Don't listen or watch, don't communicate with him in any way. Deliver the food and leave. Next time, I have to completely plug my ears. Su Yuxing secretly made up his mind. Yan Huan's arrival made all the guards in the Wuzihao Tian prison panicky for several days. But as a few days passed, nothing happened in cell number 1, and the guards gradually let go of their vigilance and returned to the previous life state again. Those who should gamble, those who should drink. Su Yuxing is still on the fringe of him, counting the experience points every day to live. That is, every time it is his turn to deliver food, he will be extra careful. He also specifically reminded the other jailers on duty to deliver food to be careful of Yan Huan, and it is best to plug their ears every time they deliver food like him. He didn't know whether others would listen or not. In a blink of an eye, a week passed. Su Yuxing was on duty that day, and as usual, he was going to deliver meals to the prisoners. Because of the presence of the old devil Yan Huan, Su Yuxing can now gain about 1,000 experience points a day. In a week, he has already rushed the cultivation base to the congealing pulse 3rd stage. Compared with Ningmei 1st stage, the difference is that the volume of true qi in the body is several times larger, from the thick true qi flow of a hair to the thickness of chopsticks. Xiao Su, wait. Su Yuxing was about to leave the back kitchen with a slop bucket when he was stopped by someone. Looking back, it was a familiar old jailer named Wu Xing. "Uncle Wu." Su Yuxing greeted each other politely. Anyway, he was the youngest in Wuzihao, and all the old guards called him uncle. Wu Xing nodded slightly. Although Su Yuxing is young, reticent, and a little out of touch with others, he is low-key on weekdays, does not fight or grab, and is diligent in doing things, so the guards at the Wuzihao have a good attitude towards him. Take this and send it to the prisoner in cell number 12. Wu Xing handed Su Yuxing a yellow wooden food box. Su Yuxing opened it and found a roast chicken, a fish and half a jug of wine inside. Su Yuxing was slightly taken aback, but immediately realized. "Uncle Wu, the prisoner wants to." Su Yuxing made a gesture of wiping his neck. Wu Xing nodded, and said, It's time to ask about it. If it wasn't for knowing that this guy hid all the gold, silver and treasures he seized during the rebellion, the court wanted to pry the treasure out of him. It was time to go to the execution ground half a month ago. Is that pried out? Su Yuxing asked curiously. Wu Xing shook his head. No, this guy's bones are too hard, his teeth are broken, and he refuses to reveal a word. I'm afraid he wants to save the money to spend in his next life. It's okay, it's none of your business, so don't ask so many questions, just send the meal to someone. Quote. Wu Xing waved his hand, urging Su Yuxing to leave. Su Yuxing responded, and left with the food box. Cut off the meal. This was the first time he gave someone a meal of decapitation. The person who ate this meal happened to be the second stage's most important source of experience for his subordinates, that General Chu Long who committed the crime of treason. Most of the prisoners who entered the prison would have such an ending. Su Yuxing didn't regret it too much. After all, even if General Chu Long died, he could still draw a prize once. Su Yuxing went to cell number 12 first. Looking at Chu Longjiang who was facing the wall with his back turned, Su Yuxing thought for a while, and shouted, Chu Longjiang, there are good wine and dishes today, why don't you hurry up and eat, don't wait, the fish will be cold. After Su Yuxing finished speaking, Chu Longjiang's back trembled slightly, and then he turned around slowly. Compared with when the two met for the first time, Chu Longjiang at this time was already much haggard. Not only was he blind in one eye, only one of his limbs remained, and his mouth was full of teeth. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that Chu Long was almost exhausted at this time. Even a strong man in the Qi-gathering realm, after experiencing so many criminal tortures, he can't bear it. Su Yuxing sighed inwardly. Chu Longjiang looked at Su Yuxing's food box on the ground with his only one eye, and seemed to have guessed something. He lowered his head and pondered for a moment, then suddenly he said to Su Yuxing, You do one thing for me, and I promise you the rest of your life to be prosperous and rich, with no worries about food and clothing. This was the first time for Su Yuxing to hear Chu Longjiang speak properly. In the past, I heard him swearing. Su Yuxing twitched the corners of his mouth, but did not speak, and made a gesture to leave. But Chu Long threw his crippled body forward, and said quickly, Before I was imprisoned, I had countless money, and I hid it all in a secret place. As long as you promise me to find someone for me and pass a few words, I will tell you about this hidden treasure. Quote. Su Yuxing smiled and said, I'm in prison today, and I don't have to worry about food and clothing. What use is money to me? Chu Longjiang opened his mouth and scolded, You fart. You have money, what can't you enjoy outside? That is what the life of the prison guards can compare to. Can more money buy experience points? Of course, it was impossible for Su Yuxing to say this to Chu Longjiang, so he just shook his head, It's fine if you don't believe it. After speaking, he turned and left. There may be people in this world who are not interested in money, but Chu Long believes that it is absolutely impossible for him to be the prisoner in this little prison in front of him. But Su Yuxing left as soon as he said it, without any nostalgia, and he suddenly became anxious. Even if you are really not interested in this treasure, you can still report the treasure location. The reason why the Imperial Court has imprisoned me for so long is for this. It is definitely a great achievement for you to report it, enough for you to advance to the 3rd level. Quote. I'm not interested in getting promoted either. Su Yuxing laughed. Chu Long stared wide-eyed with one eye, clutched the bars tightly with one hand, and said loudly, Then what do you want? Martial arts. I know 3 6th rank martial arts, 2 5th rank martial arts, and 1 4th rank martial arts. As long as you nod your head, I can pass on all I have learned in this body to you. Quote. It's a pity that Su Yuxing has ignored him, and has already walked away. Idiot. What a stupid idiot. With a roar, Chu Long knocked over the food box in front of him, spilling the delicious food and wine inside. It's a pity that no one paid any attention to him. Su Yuxing could still faintly hear Chu Longjiang's voice coming from behind him when he was far away. To be honest, he wasn't uninterested in anything. It's just simple, don't want to. As long as I stay in the dungeon in peace, whether it is money, power, or force, I will have it sooner or later. Why take the risk of making a deal with a dying prisoner? Quote. Moreover, General Chu Long is not qualified to trade with him at all. If you look through the Sin and Prison Sutra, there is a high probability that you will find the location of the treasure place that Chu Longjong said. And it's much more reliable than what you get from him. Chu Longjong knew that he was going to die, with his stubborn and eccentric character, who knows if he would deliberately trick Su Yuxing before he died. Therefore, it is still safe to turn over the Sin and Prison Sutra. Because Chu Longjong was going to be executed tomorrow, Su Yuxing didn't delay, so after delivering the meal, he found a place where no one was around and began to look through his criminal records. Sure enough, it was found by Su Yuxing. During the years of rebellion, this guy looted a lot of gold and silver treasures, all of which were hidden in a cave on a barren mountain. Afterwards, all those who built the crypt and those who knew the secret were all killed. Whether it is accumulating wealth or killing people, it is considered a crime, and it is naturally remembered clearly in the Sin and Prison Sutra. Su Yuxing got the location of the treasure, turned around and reported it. Chu Longjong was right. It's true that he's not interested in money, but he needs the credit. You really mean what you said. When Su Yuxing reported, the prison guard was drinking in his own small room with two beautiful girls who were called from the brothel outside. Hearing Su Yuxing's words, he immediately pushed the woman away and stood up from his seat. Really? Su Yuxing was neither humble nor overbearing, and replied, I don't know if it's true or not, but this secret was indeed revealed by the villain when Chu Longjong was asleep. Talking in a dream. It's really possible. Prisoner walked back and forth in the room, with faint excitement on his face. God knows how hard he worked to pry this secret out of Chu Long's mouth. It can be said that he exhausted all his skills. But General Chu Long was still like a stone in a latrine, smelly and hard. He refused to speak. Seeing that the sentence was approaching, Prison Dian had completely lost his mind, thinking that this treasure would go underground with Chu Longjong. But he never expected that someone among the jailers under him would give him such a big surprise. Okay, I get it. Prisoner recovered from his joy, looked at Su Yuxing with a smile, nodded and said, if this is true, you are considered a great achievement. Thank you, my lord. Su Yuxing said words of thanks, but his body didn't move. Why, is there anything else? Prisoner frowned slightly. Su Yuxing said calmly, if this is true, the villain would like to ask the Lord for 2 rewards. There was a flash of light in Prison Dian's eyes. He narrowed his eyes and said, let's hear it. First, the villain wants a cultivation technique with a 5th rank or higher. Second, the villain wants to ask the adult for a job with a higher position. The villain doesn't want to deliver food anymore. Quote. Su Yuxing's remarks are mainly for 2 purposes. One is to convince the prison department that the treasure place he reported is true. If it is not true, how dare you come up and make a request? The second is to tell the jailer that that's all he wants. Su Yuxing is very clear that as a superior, he will not like subordinates who are too greedy. But I don't like subordinates who are not greedy at all. Too greedy, don't know how to measure, don't know how to advance and retreat. Not being greedy makes people worry. So he not only has to be greedy, but also has to be greedy just right. The secret of Chu Longjong's treasure trove was ordered by the court. But Su Yuxing is now reporting to the prison warden, who knows if the prison warden will continue to report to the prison after they know about it. After Su Yuxing made the request, he immediately felt a pair of cold eyes scanning him up and down, as if they wanted to see through him completely. He waited quietly. After a long time, I heard the jailer speak slowly. Cultivation technique above 5th rank is impossible, at most 6th rank. As for errands, let me give you the position of a jailer. Quote. Thank you, my lord. Su Yuxing saluted and thanked, then turned around and left. After Su Yuxing left, the gloomy jail Dian suddenly twitched the corners of his mouth, and said with a light smile, he's quite an interesting kid. After speaking, he couldn't hold back the urgency in his heart any longer, and hurriedly called people over to quickly arrange the matter of searching for the treasure place. Early the next morning, Chu Longjong was taken out. When it was time to eat at noon, the page belonging to Chu Longjong in the Sin and Prison Classic disappeared, and Su Yuxing got a chance to draw a lottery. Is it extracted? Yes. Groups of light emerged from the Sin and Prison scripture, and Su Yuxing drew the biggest one again. In an instant, countless memory images flooded into Su Yuxing's mind. In these pictures, Su Yuxing seems to be the incarnation of Chu Longjong, holding a black knife, killing people with heads rolling and blood flowing into rivers. 3. Massacre Saber Technique. Human Massacre Chapter, 4th rank, reaching the pinnacle, 878 1/1000. What Su Yuxing got from Chu Longjong was a saber technique. Saber technique of 4th rank. Even higher than Qinggung in Floating Light. But the attainment is a bit worse, only reaching the 3rd level. 3. Saber technique is divided into Tian 2 chapter, D2 chapter, and Human 2 chapter. Tian 2 chapter is the 2nd rank, D2 chapter is the 3rd rank, and Human 2 chapter is the 4th rank. 3 in 1, you can enter the 1st rank peerless list. Quote, "It's a pity that Chu Long will only get a copy of the inheritance of Ren 2 chapter. Although it is only the weakest one, this saber technique is powerful enough." Human Massacre talks about killing. The more kills, the more powerful the saber technique. If one can cultivate to the peak, even 3rd rank martial arts may not be able to match it. Killing one person is a crime, killing 10,000 people is a hero, and killing tens of thousands of people is a hero among heroes. This Chu Long has practiced the human butcher knife to the peak, and there are tens of thousands of dead souls under the knife, truly killing people. This person, Su Yuxing, pulled out the jailer's saber at his waist, and tried to use this saber technique. With one strike of the knife, the murderous aura rolled up. In the light of the sword, there are ghostly shadows. The long knife pierced the air like a ghost crying and howling. The end is terrifying. I'm using this saber technique in the 3rd stage of the pulse coagulation. I'm afraid that the 9th stage of the pulse coagulation may not be able to follow, and I will be beheaded by me. Su Yuxing let out a foul breath, and slowly put the long knife back into the sheath. Having the butcher's knife in his hands is considered to be of great merit. Because he didn't need to kill people to improve this saber technique, he just needed to pile up the experience points. Upgrading to the 4th realm is only a little more than 100 experience points. Even if you upgrade to the 5th realm to return to the original realm, it will take only a few days. Su Yuxing thought about going back and making up for the little experience points left in the 3rd realm. With the long knife in its sheath, the killing intent was exhausted, and Su Yuxing turned back into the little prison guard who looked at people and animals harmlessly. With this Rentu saber technique, Su Yuxing's cultivation base finally has a place to go, and it can be regarded as a little bit of self-protection power, and his heart is a little more stable. In the following days, as usual, it was time to order every day, be on duty, and deliver meals. Cell number 1 is still the focus of attention. But Su Yuxing found that since he ignored Yan Huan every time, Yan Huan seemed to lose interest in him. When delivering meals, stop using words to tick him, be quiet and say nothing. Su Yuxing originally thought that Yan Huan was honest. After careful observation for a while, I found that this old devil seems to be eyeing someone else. Crunch. The cell door closed gently. A jailer came out of the number 1 cell, with a look of excitement that had not yet dissipated on his face. The jailer walked briskly back with the bucket in hand, and when he turned a certain corner, he suddenly saw a handsome young jailer staring at him. Xiao Su, it's you. The jailer quickly restrained the emotion on his face, pretended to be surprised and said, "Scare me." The handsome jailer glanced at the direction behind him casually, and said with a smile, "Then I'm sorry. Brother Zeng, it took too long for you to distribute the food. Uncle Li and the others asked me to take a look, for fear of accidents. What can happen if you send a meal? What a fuss." The jailer dodged his eyes, but put on a nonchalant expression on his face, waved his hands, and said, "I'm going back now. Brother Zeng, go slowly." Su Yuxing watched the other party walk away carrying the slop bucket. It wasn't until the back of the other party completely disappeared that his eyes and expression became cold. Zeng Yi. All the prisoners in the Wuziha Ocean prison, except for his youngest one. Su Yuxing has just been looking at this corner for a long time. Seeing Zeng Yi sneak into cell number 1 with his own eyes, he chatted with Yan Huan in the cell for a long time before coming out. I'm afraid Zeng Yi has already been bewitched by Yan Huan, so what will happen to him in the future? I guess it will be difficult. Su Yuxing knew exactly what kind of person Yan Huan was. This person's heart is better than snakes and scorpions, cunning is better than ghosts, he is cruel and ruthless in doing things, and he will use all means. He was once a master of martial Tao in the 9th stage, even though his cultivation base is now locked, but with his ability, it is too easy to kill a little Zheng Yi. In fact, Su Yuxing had already reminded Zheng Yi that Mo and Yan Huan had crossed paths. But I don't know whether Yan Huan's methods are really powerful, or Zheng Yi himself doesn't listen to the advice. Anyway, it's none of my business anyway. He and Zheng Yibin were casual acquaintances, and the old devil Yan Huan was terribly tight, and it was too late for Su Yuxing to hide by himself, so he didn't care about other people's lives. Shaking his head and expressing 3 seconds of silence for Zheng Yi's future, Su Yuxing turned and left. The efficiency of the prison department is higher than Su Yuxing imagined. On the 3rd day after Chu Long beheaded Wen, all the rewards he promised came down. A treat. Xiao Su must treat today. In the guard rest area, a group of old guards surrounded Su Yuxing and booed. Su Yuxing put on a shy look and said, "Please do as you please. It just so happened that the salary was paid a few days ago, so tonight I can choose whatever place I want." "That must be Zuihualu," a jailer yelled, which made everyone laugh. Zuihualu is a brothel. The grade wasn't too high, but it happened to be a place that the jailers like them could afford. Su Yuxing didn't spoil everyone's interest, and agreed with the situation, and there was another small burst of cheers immediately. After the laughter was over, some of the jailers began to sigh. "Xiao Su is the best. It's only been a long time since I came here, and I've been promoted to jailer." "That's right, Xiao Su, isn't it because you were related to Li Yudian?" Many people looked at Su Yuxing with sour eyes, complicated and jealous. Su Yuxing took the position of his deceased father, and it took him more than a month to enter the prison. On weekdays, he doesn't talk much, doesn't socialize with others, but does things in a down-to-earth manner. Unexpectedly, news suddenly came from the prison department today, announcing that Su Yuxing would be promoted to prison officer. Although there is only one word difference between jailer and jailer, the difference between the two is huge. Although the former is not regarded as an official status, it is also considered to be within the constitution. He has various benefits during his lifetime, and he can also receive a generous pension after his death. But the latter can only be regarded as a temporary worker at best. If something happens, death is death. There are quite a few people in the prison of Wuzihao, who have been in the prison for decades, but they are still soldiers, not officials. As a newcomer like Su Yuxing, when he first came here, he immediately got something that he had never been able to get after working hard for most of his life. How not to make people envious and jealous? But jealousy is jealousy, and more is to please and get close. After all, this incident is abnormal, and it can show Su Yuxing's extraordinariness. God knows if Xiao Su, who usually doesn't show much, really has an inexplicable relationship with a certain superior in prison. Su Yuxing was too lazy to care what other people guessed. Anyway, all his goals have been achieved. Thanks for watching, subscribe and support my channel.